Hi there, welcome to Stoked to be here. My name's Laura and I'm the back half of Stellar Tandem, a record-breaking attempt to cycle around the world on a tandem bicycle this year. And time is flying now, but as we're getting closer and closer to the event, we've got a few more podcasts left, and I am massively excited today to be speaking to Jenny Graham, who is actually the female record holder for circumnavigating the world on a bicycle. So yeah, it's a massive pleasure to be speaking to you, Jenny, and I'll just kind of give the stats first of all, but it was 124 days, 10 hours and I think 50 minutes that you travel around the world on a bicycle, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to speak to you and so excited about your attempt and your ride. I just think it's a fascinating sort of concept going with somebody else and being part of a pair like that. I think it adds a whole different element to it. So yeah, lots of respect.
Yeah, definitely. It's an epic challenge to spend that amount of time with somebody else as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's obviously an epic challenge for you out by yourself too. But just going right back to the beginning for now. I mean, how did this all start? Have you always been an epic bike rider? Were you racing around on bikes from a young age, or what led you into the challenge essentially?
So I think there was two parts to this. But as a kid, I would never have been classed as a sporty kid. I didn't like conventional sports, but an outdoorsy child I was. We were country kids and lived in the Highlands, so we were always out playing and making dens and playing in the woods and jumping in rivers and stuff like that. So that sort of adventure element, I guess, has always been there. But during school, I just felt like sports were not for me because of the types of sports they were. I didn't see this adventure side of things until I was an adult. So I was 24 when I kind of found out about it through a local college. My local college was running a course, an introduction to outdoor pursuits, and when I read the article describing it, I was like, what? This is a thing? That's what I used to love to do as a kid. And then it was only a 6-month course. I got 0 qualifications out of it, but it actually changed my life forever. It was this gateway into this whole new world that I knew nothing about. And then from there, I was 24 when I did that course, and I was 38 when I set off round the world. So in that time period, every year was baby steps leading up to going round the world. You definitely don't just wake up. You'll know this. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to ride round the world next week. So it doesn't happen like that. But yeah, it was incremental steps definitely for sort of 15 years.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that background was really important? Because your record as well was very much self-supported, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later. But so to have the ability to look after yourself outside and that all that outdoors experience, how much of a part did that play, do you think, in your record attempt, as opposed to just purely being a cyclist?
Yeah, I mean, that came before being a cyclist, I think. When you look at all the different elements of cycling around the world, then cycling is actually just one part of many things. And I was really into hill walking and just going and camping. We've got a son, and so when he was a little kid and I couldn't go away on big epics, then actually just going and camping and being self-sufficient out in the woods and in hills, that was all sort of part of what we were doing. So that skills are just as important as being able to turn your pedals, perhaps more so. There's so many amazing cyclists, so way better than me in every club or group ride I go out in. So I don't think it's necessarily about being able to turn your pedals quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's reassuring to hear, because Steve's a much more proficient cyclist than me, much faster. But I think there's a lot of different skills involved, isn't there?
Definitely.
So it's hopefully the combination of the lot of them.
Definitely. when I was away, something happened in Mongolia, and I had to backtrack and find a bike shop the next day, and I was like really frustrated, and I'd been speaking to a friend and like just messaging, and she was like, remember, cycling is the easy part. It's the resilience you've got to deal with this stuff that's going to get you through. And I was like, oh, what a great reminder. Like, that is exactly true. It's, that you can ride your bike. It's being able to deal with all the changes on the move while you're exhausted that is actually going to get you to the end. Yeah,
definitely. I think getting to the start line is enough challenges
there.
So
exactly.
We're learning a heck of a lot every day. And you say you didn't wake up and go, I'm going to break, but there must have been a turning point. What even put the thought in your head? Because you'd done a few of the bigger rides, I think the Highland 500, things like that before. But what even kind of tempted you to look at the world record?
So I was saying to you earlier on that I'm writing a book just now about around the world. So if you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I would give you a completely different answer. But I've had to trawl back in my mind to when I very, very first found out about Round the World, and it was when I read Mark Beaumont's book. I'd done somebody had recommended it because I was doing a bit more cycling, and it was his first attempt. So he was self-supported, and it was the first adventure book I'd really read, and I debated with friends for ages after it whether it was a waste of a ride because he just went, fast and he was going for the record, or was that actually a purposeful adventure? And I fell into the category with that's exactly what it is. That's purposeful adventure, and I would love to do it. And I made this really bold statement. And at the time, my son was 10, and I was doing school runs and getting him to karate clubs, and my life couldn't have been any different from cycling around the world. And I'd go out on 2-hour bike rides and be pretty burst at the end of them, and it was but I remember saying yep, I might do this actually, I might do this when Lachlan leaves school. But of course I didn't hold on to that because I was too busy living life. But I think that was the seed, that was one of the seeds that were planted, that I knew about that thing. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, 10 years later, I'm in this position that I've been building up all this experience, and I'm getting to a point that I'm taking it quite seriously, and I'd gone part-time at work, and I was I actually really want to cycle, not to get the record, but this is part of my life, and I like myself. I like this part of myself that I'm tapping into, so I want to do more of it. And around the same time, my friends who you were saying that you've already interviewed, Emily Chappell and Lee Craigie. So I was pals with Lee anyway. She lived up here. They just set up the Adventure Syndicate. They were running this camp. They were come on it. I got a place on it, and I met John Hampshire when I was out there, who's a coach. And John was sign up to sessions with this coach, and everyone's quite shy about it for the first couple of days, and I am right in there, at least once a day, John, I want you all week. And I was just getting all this information about training out of him, because I'd never had anyone that I could speak to like this about it, and I was so fascinated. And at the end of that week, he emailed me and he was like, look, you're clearly into this. I'll give you free coaching. I'll give you a year's free coaching, and just see how you get on with that. See if, no pressure. He was absolutely no pressure. But that to me was my Willy Wonka moment. When Charlie wins the golden ticket and he's just yes, mate, this is life changing. And it really, having that really focused my mind to be well, what do I want out of this? Because I'm going to be the fittest I've ever been. And Lachlan was my son, he'd left school, and he was on his own 2 feet a bit more. So I just had this sort of time. I was fit anyway. I'd been doing all these adventures, and I was lying. I'd done this race out in Arizona, and so I was lying waiting to come home and looking on my phone for different, I'm a mountain biker, so I was looking for mountain bike races that I could do while, you know, with John, like, helping me. And the record, it sort of just came into my sight somehow. Like, I don't know if I looked it up, or was it just on there, like, as Epic Rides. And the lassie who had it at the time, it was like 144 days, and I can't remember what that the average that she had to do. And I was like, I'm doing that. Like, I can actually ride that, and I've got all this other skill set, and I'm going to be even fitter next year. So I might just do it. And that was it. That was in the April 2017. And then in the June 2018, I was on the start line.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a quick turnaround when you think about it, but equally it was like, it's that stepping, like when you look back, you're like, all these little things that I was doing really got me to that point. But actually, when I saw it and when I started saying it out loud, then yeah, that was a year's turnaround.
Yeah, that's a scary thing, isn't it? And I think we kind of got the inkling, seeing Kat and Raz come in, the tandem couple that were just amazing. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we saw your talk at Buxton when you were telling us about the trip, and I think that was one of the seeds. So I think you've got a lot to answer for as well. But it was all these little things that built up. Yeah,
exactly.
And then I kind of kept mentioning it to Steve. I was like, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? And he didn't say no quickly enough. And then before we knew it, I think we had a party summer of 2020, and yeah, suddenly we found we were saying it out loud, friends and family, and we're like, oh no, hang on, we just saying we're going to do this. And that was it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Because once you start saying it out loud, this is the thing, isn't it? There's power to that. And it's not that you always have to do the thing that you say out loud. Sometimes you say it out loud and then back out of the room so quickly. Yeah. You're like, no, this isn't right. But yeah, sometimes you're like, oh God, yeah, it actually even feels right when I say it.
Yeah. So it's spiraled out of all proportions in there. And as I say, we're very much in the thick of, you know, the planning and the logistics and visas and flights and everything. Yeah. But what kind of barriers did you face just getting to the start line? What were your biggest challenges? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there are, aren't there? Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I wish I wrote down all the things, because I've been trying to think about it. I keep saying, I had lists on top of lists, and I was like, at the moment, I'm like, what could that list possibly have been? But when you're in it, it's like every decision about your bike, and especially when you're self-supported, I guess, that it's not like, you know, how are you going to be able to fix it? Like, is every component on it has to be fixable or changeable throughout the world? And what's so it's like all the bike, all the kit that you're going to take yourself. There was a money aspect, so I didn't have, like, you know, it was going to cost 15 grand, I estimated, on the back of an envelope one Sunday morning. I was like, nah, about that.
Yeah, we've got something similar. Yeah.
Like that, which is incredibly accurate. It was like, it was really accurate, which is so surprising. So there was a £15,000 barrier, and I got time off work for it. But I think probably the biggest barrier for me was and I don't want to say self-belief as such, because I'm not sure if it was self-belief, because I am like fairly confident, and I knew that I knew that you never know if you can do these, but I knew that I had all the skills to do this. But there was something about the not quite knowing if I had a place in that world, because the record seemed like a really big deal that was for other people, and I felt a bit normal and ordinary for it, and felt a bit like, just like, oh God, am I like it, a little bit. It wasn't the self-belief that I could do it, but it was something about the self-belief of not being very sure if I had the right to, or a place to, or something like that. So imposter, like, you know, you just feel like a total imposter. And so that, I think, was the biggest barrier. So every day, maybe not every day, but quite a lot of days in that year in the build up to it, I thought about backing out. I was like, I'm putting my family through all this, like, I'm dedicating my life to this, and actually I'm not sure if I should be. And that sort of questioning was really tiring. The minute I crossed that start line, no more questions. I never doubted that that was the exact place I needed to be right then, even when it was really hard and bad. I never wished I was anywhere else, you know. I didn't. didn't not believe from that point, but getting to that start line and having to tell people, like, I feel for you now, like, I'm hearing you saying, like, this, and like, oh yeah, I know that feeling of just being like, oh God, am I speaking these words?
Yeah, and sometimes I look at website and the social media and I'm going, is this me? Am I? But it's kind of, I think in this world of social media, that's quite a nice almost facade to put up now, because you can just be like, yeah, it's all on social media, it's a little bit fake, it's a little bit shiny and glossy, and just hide behind that. But yeah, that's mad. And once you did get, you say, once you got to the start line and you're riding, did you kind of know you could do it then? Was it that, like, you're on your bike, you've got to ride it, you've got it in hand? Did you always believe that was, you were going to break the record at that point, or did that kind of come later on?
I think I guess the drive to want to, and the belief that I could, stayed there with me, because I wouldn't have put myself on the start line if I didn't think that I could. So that was there, but not in a cocky, arrogant way. Not in a oh, I'm going to smash this, mate. Not like that. It wasn't like that. It was that, like, oh, if I just chip away at this will work. But anything could happen when you're out there that was out of my control. But I think, and I'm not sure why, but I again, or just in reflection, because I'm reading back on all my audio diaries and stuff just now, but I had this target of 110 days. Now, the record I needed to beat was 144. I was aiming for 110, and I came in at 124. So I bet the record by 2 weeks. But in my head, I was behind by 2 weeks. And so often when I'm doing my audio diaries, I'm like, oh, I'm behind. And I was like getting all caught up and being behind. And my sister kept like messaging, being like, yeah, but you're on track for the record.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but I'm behind. And like I was getting all caught up in this 110 days. So I think, and I don't know if I just had to do that to deal with the pressure or whatever when I was out there, but I don't think the record was ever a given for me. It was never a given, but I guess there was never a time that I was like, oh, I'm cutting things fine here. Yeah. But I mean, I got lucky with, like nothing seriously went wrong out there, which is so easy, like there was no accidents, I didn't get terribly ill, I got a bit sick, but it wasn't like a showstopper for weeks. But I think if you've done any traveling on bike, then you know that stuff can just happen so quickly. So it was there, but it was never taken for granted, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's good to know that, if you put things in place, so you've kind of got that confidence on the bike. And of course, you say you work really closely with a coach, which must have been of massive benefit. Yeah. What did your training look like? I mean, because obviously you live up here in Inverness, and through the winter, the weather's not conducive to riding bikes so much. Did you do because I know, like, for example, Mark Beaumont did loads of indoor work, turbo training, things like that. Yeah. Or were you just out on the bike when you could do it?
I mean, the weather up here is horrific, but when you're so driven for something, then you just get on with it, don't you? And I did, there were some storms. I mind one storm coming in, and my pal saw me, and he described it. He was like, the whole of the Highlands are battening down their hatches, so it just means like all the windows are getting closed, the curtains are shut, the doors are closed, like there's a massive storm coming in. And then he just saw me going flying past him in the dark and in the rain, and I was off out for this 4-hour ride. I just finished work, and you just did it, I did do some turbo stuff. And I would put maps up in front of me, especially Australia, because I was really worried I'd get dead bored out there. So I was like, oh, maybe if I sort of get to know Australia, and I was putting the hours in. And then sometimes I'd go to spin classes just as a treat. You know, if I was like, oh, this is enough, like I've done so much on my own. Because I think it's more it's less the bad weather, it's the more the amount that you're doing on your own. It's very, you know, obviously you guys have got each other, but I just find it a little bit isolating, I guess, more than anything else. And I knew that, you know, you know, when you're ploughing yourself into a project, you sort of isolate yourself quite a lot anyway. But then all the training was on my own too. And, you know, some friends would come out, they were good, they would come out for the first couple of hours, but I'd be doing like 10-hour back-to-back rides. And so they'd be like, yeah, we'll come for the first hour. And then they knew that I wouldn't be stopping for coffee. And like, you're just no fun to go out on the bike with anymore, so we're not coming with you. But yeah, I think the training wise, it was like working in blocks and, you know, through the week working on sort of, I guess, speed stuff and pedaling technique and building up my power. And then at the weekends it was like back-to-back endurance stuff, so working between 6 and 10-hour back-to-back days. But, you know, I wasted a lot of time. It was a bit of a standing joke, especially over winter in the house. Like, I'd get changed to go out at, like, you know, in the morning, and then I wouldn't actually leave. Like, the sun would be going down, and it's like, oh God, I've got to do this massive ride, and now it's getting dark because, you know, we're in the north of Scotland. And so I put a lot of rides off, which I think if I didn't do that, then I would have had a lot more time on my hands. But yeah, just a faffer.
It's hard though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, you know, we've not had great weather through February, and I'm like, I've done so little riding, but there's nothing you can do sometimes, is there? And shorter days make it really hard. And it's funny as well, because mine and Stevie's schedules don't always sync up, so we actually do end up trading by ourselves.
Do you?
Like, more than, you know, I'd rather be out with him, and if we're on solos, we ride at quite different speeds. So we've either got to kind of try and match bikes or at similar speeds, or he's having to go slower because of me. So it is weird. I know what you mean about it being like quite isolating, and it takes up so much of your time outside of everything else.
Yeah.
You don't get that social aspect, do you? So
and like, you're going to parties. I remember in the lead up to it, you know, I'd be going to parties and like, and I couldn't suffer hearing myself saying either A, I'm going home early, or oh, I'm not going to drink tonight, or like just all these things that you're like, oh, this is fine that I'm doing it, but I don't need to, you know, bring everyone else's night down. So I would just pretend. I would look like, I would have like, you know, if it was like a friend's birthday or whatever, I would just rock up. I'd be in great form. I would just be like, yes, and I'd give it my all for like 2 hours, and I'd walk about with a beer in my hand but never actually drink. And then just like jump in the car and go home. Maybe like sneak out when everyone else was just like topping out. And so I just had all these little tricks to try and, you know, keep my friends, my life, but still be able to devote what I needed to be prepared. But do you train in the tandem? Because I'd imagine that's like way different than riding on your own.
Yeah, the actual tandem we're taking is still being built, because we need a couple tandem so we can get it on the flight, so it splits in two. So
brilliant.
But
Are Alpkit building that for you?
No, they're not. There's only one manufacturer in the UK that builds it comes from Co-Motion in the States.
Okay.
But there's only one shop in the UK, which is a tandem shop, which can get it in at the moment. Yeah, the other one went bust. So it's a very specific frame.
Specific. Wow. Yeah.
And we've been really lucky. So K-Motion has sponsored the custom build of that. So as you've just seen, me and Stevie are quite different in height, so it should be a really good fit.
Yeah.
But at the moment we mostly ride an alley framed Doors Galaxy, and that's what we've done like loads of our past events on.
Brilliant. Okay.
But it's good to train on the tandem, but it's not always, it's a bit harder to be like intensive training.
Right.
So it's good for building up strength and things like that, and Steve's got a lot more weight to hold at the front. You know, it's obviously better to get that kind of rapport between me being stoker and captain, but I think for like my own fitness, I often find it better to be out on a solo, so we just mix it up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
that's
it's a bit
so
of everything.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. I wanted to ask you something when you said that there. I can't remember what it was now. It'll come back to me.
And then, yeah, so you're right, you were very adamant to the point where I think, and you mentioned Lee Craigie, she came out to support you, but you were very much like, this is self-supported.
Yeah.
And that's not something that Guinness dictates, and Guinness doesn't differentiate anything between a supported and unsupported ride, because it's very hard to draw the boundaries. So Mark Beaumont's epic 78-day ride was obviously absolutely fully supported, massive crew, whereas you just went absolutely, I'm doing this by myself. And what was your reasoning for doing that? Because we're going to get some kit drops, and if we get offered, assistance that's within the rules, we'll take it and things like that. But what made you want to make it such a self-supported attempt?
I think for me, so just to clarify, Lee didn't come out to support.
Yeah, she met you, didn't she?
Yeah, so she met me in halfway up Spain, and then she came and she was riding bits, and then she was going off and doing her own thing, coming back. And so I was really adamant and she came out for her own reasons to do some media, and she was out there, but it was quite a big decision to let her come, but I'd sort of thought, well, I've done all the big remote places myself, so this is probably okay. But even, why did I want to do it unsupported? I think that is, for me, that I get a massive buzz from that, being as pure as I possibly can within my own boundaries, like you said, as no one else's. It's what to me feels pure. So all the logistics being done myself, finding a bed myself, finding food, navigating through countries that, and sort of language barriers. And I get as much pleasure out of it as I do from traveling a long distance on the bike, and then so matching them together just feels really, really satisfying, I guess. Yeah, and it was never a question for me whether to do it supported or not. It's just not the way I ride. So it didn't even come into the equation. But now, that was completely unsupported. I was literally booking flights on my tri-bars, which is a nightmare by the time you've ridden 6,000 miles, because you're just your brain takes so long.
At least
to work.
I can take my hands off the bars on my back and do it.
It's your brain, your brain processing slows down incredibly, and the thinking and working out and stuff is just difficult, way more difficult. So now I think, obviously if I'm doing a race and an event, then I'm completely staunch self-supported. But for rides, for pleasure, I am way more chilled out now. I am just do you know what? If we want to get on a train, we can get on a train. And friends that were with me around the time that I was training for Around the World will say, one in particular, Evan, he just said to me the other day, I say, we're going to meet in the Pyrenees, we're both going to be out there over the summer, and I was like, great, we'll get a couple of days riding. He looked at me and he was like, I'm taking my stove. And that was his way of saying you are not beasting it, we're stopping and we're going to have a good time. It's yeah, I'm taking a stove too. But there was times that I'd be like, why are you taking a stove? We're not stopping, and I would just be had this mission of keeping going, and
if anybody's got nothing to prove on the self-support, it's you. So I think you can stop for as many proofs as you want. But I think we're guilty of the same. Sometimes we go out for what's meant to be a pleasurable ride and find ourselves sat on the corner of the pavement eating sandwiches, and why did we not just go to a cafe?
I know. It's hilarious.
You do get the bug, don't you, big time? So.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes you're not even that far from home, and you find yourself standing in a bus stop with this mug of cheap coffee out of the petrol station.
Didn't need to do that.
Sandwich. And you're why has this happened here?
And once you get in that zone, you're very much in it, aren't you? And I can imagine you must have been in the zone for that whole period of time. But I imagine it's probably impossible to describe. But what did it feel like out there? I mean, did it go really fast, or did periods drag? And with it just being you as well, I mean, did you feel like you had people supporting you back home? Did you feel like you had your like invisible peloton cheering you on, or was it quite lonely at times?
So I think does it go fast or slow? I think it varies hugely. It would go from hours passing and me being like, how have I got here? Like, I just don't remember them. They were so easy, to me focusing on every single pedal stroke I'm taking. So like, actually just one more, just one more, just one more. And it just ranged, like, and it didn't matter, necessarily what the weather was. I had some of my best nights riding in massive storms, and it's just where your head's at sometimes, isn't it? And the fatigue and so that varies, and I think knowing that will pass was really helpful. So like that experience that you guys have obviously got, and that I'd built up, that's where the training and stuff really comes in. I think, yes, we're training our bodies, but training your mind to know that stuff will pass is
everything's
huge.
Temporary, and that's what the Stevie's saying. So,
Yeah.
that feeling of feeling rock bottom. You've got to wait it out, haven't you?
But the thing is, that rock bottom stuff, I was there alone, so like, and there's a lot to be said for that. And I've read Mark's book, or listened to Mark's book, and often he talked about his struggles going across Canada, and his support crew, and him like just having no energy to give anything to that conversations. And I remember thinking, wow, I couldn't even have them there. Like, I couldn't imagine anybody being in my space that wasn't feeling how I was feeling. But for you and Stevie, then that's going to be like, you're both going to be in the same hole, but you have different, like, one of you might be imagining the end line, and the other one's like focusing on their every single pedal stroke. Like, do you sync? How does that work?
No, wow, you can't always sync it, and it's weird actually. So I don't actually know what's harder, when both of us hit rock bottom at the same time, and we're both like bottomed out and going, oh my god, we can't go another pedal stroke, or when one of us is rock bottom and one isn't, and that mismatch, and because it makes you feel worse in a way if you're the one at rock bottom and somebody else isn't,
and it makes the other one
and then
feel
you're trying, and you're like, oh, the other way, you're just trying to like G somebody on that is just not in that place. It's really hard. So it's impossible to synchronize it, but then you do get to the point where both of us are flying as well, and that's wonderful. And I think,
what do you think gets you through the times where you're not synced? Like, what is the best thing that you do as a couple? Because you're obviously, you're a couple and you spend a lot of time going long distances together on a tandem. So you must have, is it just that you know that they'll get out of it, so you give them space? Or is there something that you can do or say, or a way to be that helps that situation?
Yeah, I think sometimes I just have a massive strop. And you just have to deal with it. No, I think because we do know each other so well, we know that, if I do throw a massive strop, Steve knows that I will probably get over it within a few hours. But I think we kind of know to be kind to each other as well, and that we might need a bit more like mollycoddling, or it's like, okay, come on, let's stop for breakfast, or actually, do you know what, we're just going to do this bit and we're going to have a break, and breaking everything down and going, this is temporary as well. And I think it's relying on the past experiences we've had to go, right, we've had hard times before, but we've come through them. So I think it's a lot of that too, just kind of. But it's tough, and
it's fascinating, isn't it?
We always make up, but we don't always get on, and you do have these kind of. But I think because we know deep down that's part of the game, that's part of the process. That you'd never take it to heart.
Yes.
So I've never stormed off and left him to ride the bike by himself, kind of thing. You just get back on and keep turning the pedals.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I'm riding the Transcontinental this summer as a team, as a pair.
Oh, so amazing!
Me and Philippa Batty are going to be a female team, out there, and we're both hugely independent solo women that have these have amazing friends, but equally live our lives as real independent people. And as coming together, we both know that we can probably ride that distances that we want to ride, but can we work together through that stuff? So that's maybe why I'm so fascinated with what you guys are going to do, because I know for me just now, that's going to be one of the biggest challenges I face this year.
I think pairs riding, I think it's easy to underestimate the challenge it is. It's a very different dynamic. So that'll be really exciting.
Yeah. I know.
Oh wow. And then there's obviously all these bits and bobs things to deal with along the way, but one of the big things is because of course your record is through Guinness, and there's very strict requirements, and you have to come back with all this evidence. How on earth did you deal with that?
That was horrific.
That
was way harder. I would get someone in to do it if I was doing that again. Somebody would have been able to do that in a couple of days, and I just took so long because you're so attached to it, and your head when you come back is not used to sitting in front of a computer and thinking. It's dealing with adult life when I came back took me ages to be sort of that productive again, because it's but anyway, I think if what I did wrong, and what I would say to you for going now, is put the system in place before you go that you're going to use, and then it's going to be easy to transfer when you go back. So I got too tired to write. I was exhausted after, I think, maybe day 10. You see my diary. So for Guinness, you have to keep a diary of every day, of people you met, what the weather was like, where you passed, what your all your stats. And it's nice to have, but I would write that out for day 1, day 2, and then they just started tailing off. And I was keeping audio, so we were making podcasts. So we've got Round the World podcasts. So I was keeping audio for that. And my sister was like, you need to do that for your diary, because I said, I've stopped writing the diary and I don't know what to do. I was like, it's been a week and I've not written the diary. And she's like, oh my God, you need to speak the diary. And if I thought that I was going to speak the diary before I left, then I would have had something in place to get all that information off it when I came back. But because I didn't, it just became quite difficult. But I think the setting out with that plan that's realistic, and time stamping your photos. So that was quite a big job. I don't know if I don't know if it is that big a deal. Is the thing that you need to do, and it's so important for everybody to be doing it, even when they're out there, just to give their ride integrity, if nothing else, never mind the record. But that keeping really good and across multiple devices of stats and proof of where you are. So I had a spot tracker that was sending a signal every 15 minutes all around the world. I had my Garmin unit that was going straight back to Strava and Garmin itself, and then I also had the computers on the little cat eye computers on top of I had 2 of them on my tri-bars, and they were collecting the miles as my wheels were going round. So there straight away, then I've got 3 different pieces of evidence that I say I am where I say I am. Plus I just used my bank card everywhere because I didn't want to keep receipts. So it was great, because then I've just got this, especially if you do, I think I was Starling or Monza when I was out there. So it does it all for you. When you get back, it's oh, this is how much you spent on food this month. And then you've got all your receipts, or you can take pictures of your receipts and it matches it up to that payment. So there's things like that you can do that saves on the faff. But I think that things are really important, for the integrity of the ride, I think.
Yeah,
being really
definitely.
like this is where we are and this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get a spot tracker, and we thought about
Yeah.
having like trying to make sure we've got 2 GPX tracks at any one time and all
Yeah.
this. But
Yeah.
and like I think Cat and Raz, so they came back with like bundles of receipts. So I think I'd already thought photographing them might
Yeah.
be good, and if there's Wi-Fi, just upload everything to a cloud as quickly as possible. And but it's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. Somebody set my phone up before I left on. I've got no idea how they did it, but they set up via Dropbox that as soon as I came into Wi-Fi, everything on my camera roll would be uploaded. It's like magic. So I didn't have to physically do anything like that. It just did it for me. That was really helpful.
They are all really, really good tips.
Yeah.
And I think anything you can do to reduce the admin on the road. That's
because
kind of
what you
we're
think
looking at.
now will be really easy. You're like, I went the whole way across Russia with my tri-bar. I went the whole way around the world, my tri-bar flopping, my left tri-bar flopping, and with my saddle, I went right the way across Russia with my saddle flopping backwards. And every couple of days I would try and tighten the bolts, and the tightening the bolts wasn't the issue. So then it would just keep doing it. And I was always too exhausted to do anything about it until I got to a bike shop. I'd be like, can you fix that for me, do you know? So I think is sitting here now, you'd be like, oh, that's easy to do. But yeah, it's just like, be prepared to have a really slow processing brain.
Yeah, definitely. So the more we can get done now, I think the better. And as you say, like the audio diaries, the podcasts are amazing, obviously, and of course you've got the film as well, Eastbound, from your footage, and I think that's just I hope we can be realistic about what's practical on the road, but I think it's amazing to have those memories to take back, and I think that was another aspect, wasn't it, trying to like get some footage along the road. That must have been a challenge too.
So it started as a real challenge. So I was collecting footage just on my really cheap Motorola, like £100 phone. It was ridiculous, and then I was keeping audio on that as well. So the video was going back to make a film possibly at the end of it, which we ended up doing, and then the audio was going to Radio Scotland. So it was like a massive job, because then I had to keep on top of my charging as well, which is another huge job out there. But I found it was a massive job for the first few weeks, and then because I was on my own, it became really methodical. So like some of my audio diaries are like half an hour long. Like just sitting at the roadside speaking away to myself, but it's like they make me laugh a lot, because I'm like, I remember how comforting it was to have that, you know, and just to have it almost became like my roadside therapy sessions when things were tricky. It would just be like, just sit down and speak to my phone and just like let them know what's going on. The thing that I would do differently if I was doing that again, so that was great, everything was getting saved to Dropbox and everything, like all the audio was going back, and it was all other people were in charge of that from a publicity point of view. So, and that was really important that was getting done. If I was doing anything like that again, I'd also have a way of recording just for me. So I found myself, because I knew that the audio was going out to the radio stations, and I didn't know what was going to happen with the footage, then I didn't want my people like at home worrying about me. So I've got my son and my mum, my sister, and I was like, I don't want them hearing the actual truth right now. Like, I don't want them knowing like absolutely everything. So I can hear and I can pick out, because I know like it brings me right back to it when I hear myself speaking, and then I'll laugh something off and I'm like, oh, that wasn't actually very funny. That was that laugh was for your mum, so she'd think you're okay. And the reality is my mum knows that laugh as well. She knows that that's not okay. But if I had a place to do that, I think that's, then you can be, when you come back, you've got the realest story that you can, like, you're being so truthful about that. And I'd say that even between the two of you, it's like, have something just for you, because you're in it as a pair, but ultimately you're an individual as well. And I think having that space that this is going nowhere else, this is just for you. You're the only person that's going to hear this unless you choose otherwise when you're in a different headspace, then that'll be fascinating. I'd love to have that. Like I would love to have that.
Yeah,
stuff.
I think that's a really good point, isn't it? Because you're never going to be in that space again, are you? And it's it's a really interesting tip. And so we can barely imagine just getting to the start line to begin with now.
I know.
But what was it like getting to the finish line? I mean, did that even seem real, or was it? I mean, sometimes when we've done these big events, you finish and you're like, oh, okay, we're finished. And it doesn't sink in for like days and days. Was there like a point where you suddenly went, oh, hang on, I did this.
Yeah.
That was me.
So funny. Is that 3 years? It's coming up 4 years this year, so 3.5 years ago. And I think now it's sunk in, but honestly, for such a long time. Like the end line, getting to the end and seeing everyone there, they all looked like they were made of cardboard. Like I couldn't get my head around that was them. And I was like, we were hugging, but I was like, hey, is this you? Like it was such a weird headspace because I thought about it so much, and now it was here, and it was like, oh, I'm wrecked. And yeah, it was amazing, but equally it wasn't. It was a strange, almost like maybe not quite out of body experience, but that kind of thing that you're like, this isn't a real interaction, is it? It's a bit like that. And then for ages afterwards, because I went home, like you'll find this, right? So you go away and you've ploughed everything into getting to the start line, so the rest of your life is falling apart. Like all you can do is ride your bike because everything at home is broken and nothing's like, like you're getting bills because you're not paid things properly or whatever, like you're collecting up charges or just like all this really stuff that you just like admin that you've just not kept on top of, and so when you come home, you're pleased that you've done it. Well, this was for me anyway, but I was then like, oh, I actually just need to get my other life, like my actual life, sorted out a bit because, I've got loads of maintenance stuff to do, and like the bathroom really needs cleaned, and just like all these really weird things that you wouldn't think were important, but you were like, well, if I'm going to like have my nice safe space to be in, now I've come back from this massive journey, then it is important. And so I'd go to like because the Highlands, like people in the Highlands were unbelievably supportive of me. It was so like, I'm so moved and touched by how much they got behind it, and so lots of people knew that I'd done it, and so I'd be going to like B&Q or to a shop to get like bleach or a hammer or just something really basic, and I'd get stopped with this person being really excited, and I remember just being like, oh, I just really need to fix the skirting board that keeps falling off and has for 2 years, or just all this. It was weird, and then but they would bring me back round and be like, oh yeah, I've just broken the record, but it wasn't what the life I'd imagine I'd be having like 2 months after I came back. So I think that was such a long-winded way of saying it, but I think definitely like when I came back, the enormity of what it was couldn't possibly sink in because I was too busy with the everyday stuff of managing and getting by and like rebuilding what life was. I just say I can't barely imagine getting to the start line for now, so that just seems so inconceivable. But and I knew that people got like that at the end, like I knew the end of things were a thing for people, but I sort of thought it would bypass me, as we do as humans, don't we?
You always think you're the exception.
It'll affect everyone else, but I know about it, so it won't affect me. But yeah, definitely it was such a bizarre time. And I remember I tried to tell a few people that I didn't know very well, maybe, that had just stopped me in the street, and I'd be like, oh, it's weird. It's like I can't really touch it. It's there, but I can't touch it. And people would be like, and like just look at me with this blank face, like, this is not the answer we want. We want you to be really excited about it. And so then I'd be like, oh yeah, well, I am really excited about it, because that's what you want to hear. But actually inside I was like, oh God, I don't know what I am about it. I don't know what it is. But now I can happily say 3 years later that it's very much, something that's,
it's just totally amazing, and it's something you've got forever, and it's just so inspirational. And have you inspired anybody particularly? Has there been anybody that's kind of come up to you and gone, oh, I saw what you did and now I've gone and done this? Or
that
do you get
has been incredible. Oh my goodness. And it's that I got this lovely message when I was away or just came back, and it's the lassie that I sort of I know, but like we're not friends, but we know through the cycling world, and I'd never met her at the time. And she said, you inspire me, you have inspired me. And she said not to ride a bike, but just to get on with this thing that she needed to get on with, and she'd been putting off because she wasn't very sure about it. And it was like, oh wow, like that stuff is really cool. And people, the thing is, I think you said earlier, like, were you lonely? Did you feel that I had my invisible peloton? Having a spot tracker just instantly gives you this community of people that are watching you, or like watching out for you. And so mums, like people I knew that just had kids, even some people I didn't know that had just had kids, and they'd be up doing a feed, feeding through the night, and they'd check where I was, and then I'd get messages like 4 in the morning. It was 4 in the morning here, but I might be up riding there, like, oh, I'm just feeding the wee one. This lassie Laurie, she's like, I'm just feeding the wee one, and you're out doing that. And it was just be like, oh, like that stuff was really nice. It was so lovely receiving that sort of messages at different times of the day that people were checking in, and I found that when I came back, everybody had a story to tell me about their experience of watching the dot. So it was less about my cycle, if you like. So like you go off and you cycle, and then you put out this spot tracker, and people see your dot moving around the world, and then their world, because they're watching that dot, it's that thing we said about planting seeds. It's planted a seed, and then it's changed something for them, or what they're going to do that day, or what is something happened because of it. And there's so many stories like that I love, that it's no longer about you and your bike ride. It's just that little seed planting that has just, that is why I got to the start line, is how you're getting to the start line, because these little bits of inspiration throughout our lives just like turn and make our trails, and it's so cool to be part of that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that would just be getting to the finish line would be obviously amazing, but to think that we could have that potential to inspire other people, and not necessarily to ride around the world, not even necessarily to get on a bike, but to go and do something super cool is just so that's amazing to hear that you've had those experiences.
So lucky.
Just to kind of round things off a bit, I've got a little bit of tandem trivia
for
you. It's not too bad.
Oh my God, we're going to be rubbish at this.
No, it's fine. It's just, so the first one really, have you ever ridden a tandem?
I have not, I don't think. Have I tried one? Because I really wanted to, like for ages, I really wanted to do a ride on them. I don't think I have, but I might have had a little shot on one, but I can't remember.
You have to give it a go.
Okay.
And then if you were to ride a tandem, and you could ride a tandem with anybody you wanted, alive, dead, fictional, whatever, who would you put on your tandem with you?
Oh, I think I would, if they would come with me, I would...
They don't have a choice, by the way.
Oh, they don't have a choice?
You can put whoever you want on the tandem you get to choose whether they like it or not.
Okay, I put my pal Em on the tandem. I put my pal Em on it. She would never come on a bike ride with me, or like only. Oh no, she has come on a bike ride with me. I'd love to do like a huge adventure with her, like overnight, and we just laugh so much. And so yeah, so it wouldn't be anyone famous or.
No, that's great though.
Yeah,
well, I can hardly argue with that. I'm on the tandem with my best friend all the time. So. And would you be on the front? Would you need to be
Always.
In control? Yeah.
This is it. This is what I could not handle somebody else being on the front. How do you cope with that? Is that just your personalities that you don't need to?
Do you know what? The first time we did this little loop around our local lanes. There's this little tiny dip, like you barely get up to 20 miles an hour. And we're riding along, and because you can't see from the back. And we went down this little dip, and I was almost in tears. I was like, oh my God, I could not cope with descending at all, because I had no control, no brakes, no gears, anything. And so it took quite a lot of getting used to not having that control. But I think, it's about the communication, really. You've got to have that communication between the two of you. And Steve's in control of the steering, the gears, everything like that. But I do my fair share of the admin and the stops and stuff. So
that's what Tandem Wow. That's what stuck out with speaking to Tandem Wow. It's that everyone's busy. It's just that you're not doing the thing that that you're used to, maybe that you're used to being in charge of.
Yeah, and I've been doing like tons of routing and stuff recently, and Steve can route, but I've kind of been doing it, and he's kind of going, oh, you're doing all this work. I'm like, you've got to drive the thing. You've got 18,000 miles driving it. Don't you worry. Your time will come.
What about the view for you, though? Does that like, are you just looking at the back of Steve?
You get a knack of peering round the edges, but I'll mostly be staring at his lower back for 180 days.
Because it just makes
But you
sense.
can look at the sides more, so it's weird. So I can see things. You can go on the same ride as a solo bike and a tandem bike, and you get a completely different view, because you can look one side or the other, and you can stop and look at something if you're stoker. Whereas when you're on a bike, you have to be obviously having one eye on the road all the time. So you get a much better view of the front, but you don't get a view of the side.
Okay,
so it's a very different perspective. And I think it would be interesting as well, because I go hands-free on the back, that I can. So I've got a wee GoPro to be able to try and get footage, and I don't know how he managed it, trying to negotiate that and everything else along the way, but it means that hopefully I can get loads of footage from the back of the bike as well, so that's quite exciting.
So is the plan to make a film?
I think we're going to get footage, so I'm not an experienced filmmaker. I have a very amateur YouTube channel, but it's too good opportunity to miss. So
exactly.
We're going to try and take as much as we can, and then see what we come back with, and see if that makes something or nothing.
Amazing. Oh, it'll be so good.
Yeah.
Make sure you capture all the bickers.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's
the human element.
People don't want to just see the good stuff. They want to see it when it's tough as well, and that's what comes across really well in your film. Is you filmed everything, and but then it makes it so human. It makes it so much more interesting. So
that's funny, because the filmmakers when I came back were like, "You always seem like you're in a good mood. We need more dips." And it's like, oh God, it's really hard to turn the camera on when it's like another moan. What I'm going to do, with Phil and I are going to do, because we're making a documentary out of the Transcon. So what we are deciding is that we've got a rule that we film everything, but none of it has to go out if neither of us are happy with it at the end. So then it takes the pressure off. If somebody's got a camera in your face, you're like, well, this isn't going anywhere. This is just for us, and we know that this is happening. So that's going to help us. So then if one's crying or whatever, which will probably be me, then Phil won't have to worry too much about getting the camera out. So I'll be like, I can cut it.
I think we'll do similar. And so we'll get the footage and bring it back, and then see what we've got. But I've done it before, and I've got the camera out and be like, we're doing this ride, and Steve's like, can you put some effort in? We've got to go uphill now. And I'm like, but yeah, I think it's as you say, it's trying to get that balance, isn't it? And then we often say we're joined by the frame on the tandem. Is there anything that you're joined by the frame to on your rides? Is there any kind of like little luxury? Is there anything you can't do without, like a bit of food, a bit of gear?
Yeah.
Is there what goes on like every ride with you?
I mean, nothing, because I'm never organised to find everything that I need for a ride, so I don't get too hung up on things. I became incredibly close to my bike. Little pig I called her, and I just had this, after the first 3 weeks, we'd been through so much together that I actually, it felt emotion towards her. Which is hilarious. And I'd never really felt like that about an object before, but this bike, I'd wheel her into Pipes and she'd stay in there with me. I'd take her in every single hotel room or B&B. We faced the traffic, we faced the bears, like everything that was there was just me and that little bike. And when I came back, Shand, Stephen from Stephen Shand, had suggested that it might be quite cool if we put her in the museum, or we could do stuff with her, and they'd build me another bike, and maybe we should keep little pig as she is round the world pristine. And he said that he could see my chin starting to wobble. And he's like, we don't need to, but I was just like, I just felt this really strong connection. Bits of kit, there's tons, isn't there, that you can take and are great for rides. I love a dyno system. It's really satisfying, and I mean, I think when you're traveling that lightweight and self-supported, then every piece of kit that you've chosen is there for a reason, and it's a good reason. But the thing I was joined at was literally my bike frame.
But that's pretty important. So I think that definitely goes. And then last but not least, why should we ride around the world on a tandem bicycle together and break the world record?
Great, I love that you're asking me this.
Just don't say we shouldn't.
Oh God, I mean, riding around the world itself, for me, I think since I've come back, what it's done is possibly, it's made everything realistic. Like, there's things that I very rarely say now, oh, there's no way I could do that. Because I'm like, well, there's a way. It might not be an easy way, but there is a way. It's made me feel incredibly privileged for being able to choose what I do with my life, for being born into a country that's accepted, that I've got a choice. And I think that two things, being really, having so much gratitude for that, and equally knowing that I can use that to do what I choose to do. That's incredible, and people don't need to ride around the world to do that, but that's what I came back with. I think the taking a sustained amount of time out of adult life is something that everybody should do if they have the opportunity, and if they can. It's just so freeing to be, and you don't realise what strain and stress it can be, the everyday grind, until you give yourself that break from it, do you? And when your only purpose is to get up and ride the next day, it's just like, wow, it's such a cool feeling. Why should you do it in a tandem? My goodness, I cannot answer that. I want to have this interview with you when you come back. Okay.
We'll see what we say then.
So
I'll be like, that was a daft idea.
I'm going to do a takeover. I'm going to do a takeover of your podcast, and I'm going to interview you. I'm going to do it separately and together.
And get the real story.
We'll get the real story, exactly. There's going to be loads of beer involved, so there's no hiding behind this.
Oh my goodness, I'll definitely take you up on that.
Where are you starting and finishing?
The Brandenburg Gate. As a bit of a nod to yourself, yeah. Well, Steve's brother lives in Berlin, but
no. Like,
but yeah, no, it's totally is to do with it.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's gonna be amazing.
So chapter starting in Berlin. It's a really good place.
Yeah, so we can't wait just to get to the start line, as I say. And oh my goodness, it's just been such a pleasure to speak to you. You've been such a massive inspiration, and thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time.
It's been a delight.